The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark is in. Do you have a W flag in studio?
I don't, but I should. I really should bring one in.
Every Chicago kid I know, and I'm speaking of the pride of Chicago, Danny Burke, he has that and you do too, don't you? I mean, you've got the 5 diamonds or stars.
The Chicago flag, yeah.
Right, yeah. Every Chicago kid I know that gets on camera, that sounds weird, that have worked for me, that sounds weirder. You've got the Chicago flag backdrop.
It's just
Ferris
kind of a
Bueller
thing.
Kick off a thing?
I mean, it's just kind of like that symbol, right? I mean, I guess it's something that the city, I guess, takes a lot of pride in. So
Sure.
we all kind of have one. I mean, I'm not from like the city, obviously, but I mean, I still have one. I think it looks cool.
Maybe I'm incorrect here. I feel like all the kids that had one of those Chicago flags, you'd ask them about the Chicago. Like, what was it like living in Chicago? Like, it's all right. It was just all right. You know who's like the kids in Lincoln that go to UNL that are from Kansas City? They're the weirdly prideful ones. Where if you say something bad about Kansas City, like there's gonna be a war in class. Like I've never understood
their
that
barbecue
one.
or something.
Just their football team.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, they'll get after you on that. You and I don't have Southeast night flags hanging behind us.
Okay, that's different.
No, I'm just saying.
Okay, I didn't know if there was trying to be a comparison.
No,
drawn there.
not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying we don't have a
right
the Knights flag up. Maybe we should do that. I don't know. No, you don't think so?
I think that they would bring into some questions about our impartiality during either me officiating or you calling high school sporting events.
We're very impartial. We are very impartial. Well, we've got a little bit of a outline for the spring game today. Post practice, Matt Rhule spoke. A lot of talk about the wide receivers. We'll hear from Coach Rhule. We'll hear from Coach McGuire, and we'll hear from one of the wideouts that decided to come back from the portal. Portal is on our mind also because it opens up here on Saturday and lasts till the end of the month, April 30th, right around NFL draft time. So we aren't going to get specific with names, but we could dive into some position groups that could see some attrition. So we'll get there in a little bit. Mitch Sherman back with us from The Athletic. We'll talk with Mitch in probably about 15 minutes or so. Mitch Sherman joins Hail Varsity Radio in hour 2. Baseball permitting, we'll spend a few minutes with Jabba Chamberlain. He's hunkered down watching the Varsity Southwest Silverhawks right now. They are in the second game of a doubleheader, a hack tournament going on. So he's watching his little guy, not little anymore, on the diamond. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240 for Hail Varsity Radio, or wherever you can catch us across the dial, 800-825-5865. You're welcome to check out the show on the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Catch us in the afternoon. Damon and Andrew in the morning, coffee and cream, 7 to 10. KFOR Facebook and Twitter also gives you video access and your chance to throw in some thoughts for the portal. So interesting today with Coach Rhule. Let's just get it kicked off with Coach as he gave us the lowdown on what it's going to be like here with the spring game. Cut 14, here's the format. It will look like football. That's a large sigh of relief to many of you coming in.
Yeah, it's just going to come down to numbers. I mean, if we're planning on playing a game, you know what I mean? Like, I like to play a game, and have it be competitive. That's kind of, I've done a couple years where I had to do like offense versus defense, but even that I've tried to make competitive. But my goal is for it to be a competition and just to play it out.
So, good, right? Last year, did we all want to kind of jump in front of a train? a little bit with the spring game last year. I get injury concerns. I get how thin you might be at a position. And even this year, you've got a lot of upperclassmen that aren't practicing that are out. Your quarterback, your starting defensive lineman, one of your linebackers that returns with a number of years under his belt. I would understand being cautious this year, but that's not the way Coach Rhule's going.
Well, think back to last year where it was two-hand touch for most of the game, and then what's the number one problem for the Huskers in Northwestern? Physicality and tackling. Who could have seen that one coming? It's almost like you play like you practice.
Well, you do, and it's been an ongoing issue for almost 10 years. It just has been. And the secret is if you go get players that come in really at a high level of tackling, you either recruit them or you make them, right? Well, if you're a developmental program that's not developed at the past level, you're not going to get tacklers. Look at the defense 2 years ago where you had some super seniors return. And I'm thinking of JoJo and Stilly specifically, how good they were by their final year here. And they're really talented ball players. And it's a situation where you can't take for granted that kids are going to be able to play like a pro on Saturdays if they aren't getting the necessary physicality during the week. And it's limited. It's a pain in the neck for coaches, and I get it. It's in the name of safety. I understand. But don't expect them to be great or even good Saturdays in the open field or stopping yards after contact if you're not able to really get after it at least once or twice a week.
Well, the intriguing part, too, is that you mentioned there's, older starters that are out right now. I mean, this is a great opportunity to see Jeff Sims in somewhat of a game situation, right? Because that's the big question mark. Okay, is he going to end up beating out Casey for the position? Or is he going to be the backup to Casey for his first year at Nebraska? So I think that's a good chance to have a lot of Nebraska fans get their eyes on Jeff Sims, what he could bring to the table. Obviously, we don't know how long he would play in the spring game and how live it could get. I know that they want to play a game, but obviously there's going to be some padding there, if you will. So I think that's something that intrigues me with the game scenario, and you already have older starters that are out. So you're already kind of erasing, say, the first couple of drives of a normal spring game with those starters being healthy, I guess.
Well, and we heard Matt Rhule say that he wants the quarterbacks live. Maybe we'll hear that from Rhule here in a second. But this is something we were talking about yesterday on the show, like how much of a difference there is when the quarterbacks are live. And I think the quote from him was he thinks quarterbacks play better when they're live.
Well, let's hear him. And, it'll be Hunt the Quarterback, Kier and Dominican Sue Dix commercial.
I would hope so. I mean, that's my plan. I mean, if they're live on Thursdays, they should certainly want to be live, I think, in the spring game. But we'll have to wait and see. You never know. Guy gets a hip or something. Maybe I don't want him to be live. I don't want to box myself into a corner because I always want to do what's right for the team, not what's popular. But I would like to see them play live. I think quarterbacks play way better when they're live, to be quite honest.
Amen. Agreed. So guess what? So did your defense. Mm-hmm. And your defense plays a lot better in the fall, presumably, if they're working on tackling a quarterback that is a moving target. And you're going to see a lot of moving targets or at least some mobility in that pocket. So
you get a better sense of what a quarterback actually is when you have live bullets flying at him. Whenever if I stand in this pocket too long and don't make a decision with this football, I'm going to get smoked in the backfield. Someone's coming from my blind side, and they're going to take my head off. Do I want that, or do I want to get this ball out? Do I want to be decisive and tuck it and run? You get to see what style a quarterback is actually going to play in and what their decision-making looks like, because you don't get an idea of that whenever, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get two hands pushed into your back, and that's going to be the end of the play.
Or if you're Heinrich Harburg, you'll just go down the field and put somebody on the rear end, too. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw that video, but I want to see that in the spring game. That'd be great.
And we're right on with what we are able to see a week from Saturday, potentially, is, all right, what's the development been like with the quarterbacks? Is Sims got a lead, presumably, because he's been out there. Casey's been doing what he's allowed to do, and I'm not counting Casey out at all. It'll be nice to have both options for Nebraska this next fall.
Well, in about a week and a half following the spring game, we've been talking about it all spring long. That quarterback room is loaded, and we're probably going to have one or two of those guys either playing different positions or playing quarterback somewhere else following the spring game. So I understand why Matt Rhule says, you know what, I want to have live bullets out there, because even going live in a scrimmage is different than playing in front of 60 or 70,000. How many people show up for the spring game? That's different, and you want an idea of what that player is going to be like in the game, because I brought this up on the show plenty. Tim Tebow, when he was with the Broncos, was a terrible quarterback in practice, was like awful.
Because he wasn't getting hit.
Well, he was missing receiver short, missing him long. He couldn't really show off the wheels like that. And then they put him in a game, live fire. He's got the fans behind him, and he turns into a different player. He's got that mojo, that swagger behind him, and he goes and wins the Broncos however many games to finish that season and take him to the playoffs. There's a completely different factor in terms of playing in front of a crowd, and that's got to factor into whenever these coaches are deciding, you know, who's going to be our top 3 quarterbacks next year and who might be hitting the road.
Well, to add to your point, too, and just kind of the sense of urgency that a quarterback plays with, too, when you have live fire going at them, because when you're in a practice situation and you got nobody coming at you, I'm not saying this is all quarterbacks, but some quarterbacks just kind of tend to go through the motions, right? And kind of be lackadaisical with their reads, maybe not make as great of a throw as they normally make under pressure. They don't really have the freedom to run in a practice because you don't want them getting hit. Maybe that's something that they're good at in the field of play. So I think I agree there. I mean, if I get it, you practice so many weeks out of the year, you don't want to risk an injury too much. But at the same time, practice, you've heard so many coaches say it around the country, it's supposed to be harder than the game. And if you can't make practice harder than the game, then how are you going to go out and win on, say, a Sunday in the NFL or a Saturday in college football? I think that's a pretty big point of emphasis there, too.
What do we get from Harburg in a live situation? What does he look like at the quarterback? You've seen some video glimpses. What translates to spring game Saturday? Chubba Purdy, how has he settled in with a new quarterback coach in this offense? They love his athleticism. They really like his speed. Let's spend a minute here from Coach Rhule on the quarterback progress, cut 13, as we'll wind down from Rhule here. But overall, as you're over halfway home, what's the quarterback progression been like?
Well, they've gotten a lot better. They've done a really nice job. That scrimmage, that Saturday live scrimmage, really helped them, I think. And since then, we mixed the live day in last week where they were live down the red zone. But I think that's really helping our quarterbacks. And, just the repetition of, again, when you're trying to get 4 quarterbacks ready, that's tough. So the repetition and the way we're practicing, always having at least 2, sometimes 3 drills going at once to, kind of the blueprint that Coach Osborne laid out. We're trying to maximize that so that, they're getting a ton of reps.
That's big. That gets them better. That gets them comfortable. And that gets them challenged so they'll learn from said mistakes. Portal-wise, that is next on the horizon. It is Portal Day on Saturday, April 15th through April 30th. The portal is open. That coincides with the last week of Nebraska's spring session. Who is going to depart? You'll have some names. Will they be notable names? Coach Rhule was asked to start the media session if he's thinking about the portal at all. Cut 1.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it. You guys, I've been pretty outright, straightforward that I look at the transfer portal as a tremendous opportunity for guys to figure out where they want to go. Some people probably don't make the right decisions. Some people do make the right decisions. I think the main issue is coaches, sometimes, inducing people to leave places, for the wrong reasons. We probably have dealt with a little bit of that from other places. But I care deeply about all of our guys, and I want them all to go where they're going to be happy. So I haven't had anybody express to me that they want to do that, but that'll come. Some kids will, at some point, whether it's not now or some point, we'll look into that, and I'll always be there as a resource for them. But I'm not, I'm worried about spring practice.
Good answer. Fair answer. But in the back of your mind, you got to be wondering. You would hope that you've made enough connections, even though it's been only 100 days plus. But you got to go to those guys that are portal. Well, everyone's portal eligible, but your upperclassmen specifically, gauge their happiness, gauge their interest. Some of them have been injured, so that is something. And you leave for a couple of reasons, right? You leave because you think you're getting screwed and maybe you're not that good and you're not getting playing time, or you're sick of losing and you want to go to a winning program. You had an exodus a year ago with some notable defensive linemen that went to Oregon. And a couple of guys followed Tuioti out that direction. Oregon had a hell of a lot better season than Nebraska last year. So
I think
I think you're up against that as much as anything, because you don't have anything other than the promise it's going to win now, but you have to stick around to see that actually happen.
And I think you can also add the fact that, you know what, you've had different position coaches coming in. This could be your third and 4 years, and sometimes you just don't get along with your position coach. It's just not the right style of coaching that fits your wants and needs, so you're going to go find somebody that's going to fit that a little bit better. There's a variety of reasons guys go into the portal, but I believe Matt Rhule whenever he says, I'm not worried about that right now, because what's the point of having a guy on your team if they don't resonate with their position coach? They're going to be unhappy as a backup. They're going to be unhappy with their role. It only leads to more problems down the road. And obviously it sucks to lose talent, but there is that element of guys who got to do what's best for them. And if they're not doing what's best for them, you're not going to get the best out of them. So what's the point of having them on your football team? I think the only thing that's different now with what the argument would usually be is that you might have 15 guys that need to enter their name into the transfer portal between now and the start of fall camp.
That's no good. And if they've been practicing and working out and say they're in that top 2 or top 3, and then all of a sudden they ghost, I mean, that's time and reps away from somebody else behind him. Mitch Sherman's on the way. Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Mitch Sherman with The Athletic joins us at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. And if you're watching on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle, it's video, Mitch. Nice Navy shirt, Mitch. I have copied you. How are we doing?
Well, you saw me this morning. I was wearing the same shirt. I am doing well. How are you, Chris?
We're good. Thanks for jumping on. And we're almost to the finish line of spring football 2023. Got to hear from Coach Rhule today. And as you sit back, let's spend a moment here on one position group. And it was pretty fascinating to hear from Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, kind of his story, his journey, and the fact he came back. But overall, Mitch, let's talk about the wideouts. And is that one of the more intriguing rooms for you as we look at this spring product, at least the showcase of it a week from Saturday?
Yeah, it is. It was interesting to hear Matt Rhule today say that he thought the wideouts had a chance to be one of Nebraska's strongest position groups, because you look at it and what's coming back and you basically have Marcus Washington right now. And that's about it. I mean, Xavier Betts was not with the team last year. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda was there for just 4 games, or to play in 4 games. And, Alante Brown, his status is undetermined. He's not with the team right now, so they're not counting on him necessarily. Otherwise, it's all new players. And you have established guys in Billy Kemp and Joshua Fleeks, who are transfers from Power 5 programs, but not necessarily coming off their best years, and they've got things to prove that they can be healthy and that they can be productive at Nebraska. And beyond that, it's unproven young players and then true freshmen who are on the way in. We saw Malachi Coleman out at practice today walking around, but he still has to graduate from high school, as do the rest of Nebraska's signees from that 2023 class. So, I would say, in just looking at it, if I assessed it at the start of the spring, that it was certainly one of the more untested groups that had that we needed to learn the most about. So it was intriguing to hear Matt Rhule describe them in the way that he did, and I think a lot of that has to do with Garret McGuire and just the type of confidence that the head coach has in his young assistant.
Mitch, do you think that part of that also comes down to what Nebraska thinks they have in the defensive back room? Because the coaching staff has been harping all spring long about the importance of getting the good-on-good reps, and I'm paraphrasing for them there. But I think whenever you look at that defensive back room, Coach Cooper's been cautious in throwing out praise for individual guys, but you look at that room as a whole, and there's a lot of experience coming back there. And whenever those young receivers are going up against those guys every single day in practice, do you think that plays a part into why this coaching staff might be so high on the wide receiver room?
It could, yeah. I mean, there's a natural competition, of course, between the receivers and the DBs, and I think in the dynamic of this team, it extends even deeper because you have a competition between Evan Cooper and Garret McGuire. You know, those guys are workout buddies early in the morning, and they're both young and energetic, and you know, I think have some similar attributes in what they bring to the coaching staff. So they foster a competitive spirit, and then that extends over to their receivers or their players, their receivers and their DBs who are going up against each other. But yeah, we haven't really seen in the snippets of practice where we've been allowed in the receivers and the DBs to go against each other. It's mostly been position work. The 7-on-7 and the full team stuff comes after we're kicked out of practice. So they've not let us see that kind of competition. But, Matt Rhule described some of it today and, talked about Garret McGuire and how he leads the entire passing game in that 7-on-7 setup. And I would assume, yes, based on the optimism that they are putting forth about the receivers, that they're showing pretty well against the DBs. And Nebraska knows what it has. I think with the DBs, we know what Nebraska has, maybe right there with the running backs, as much as any position group on this team, because there's so much experience and good experience, good players, quality players who are returning at all of the positions in the secondary.
Mitch Sherman is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mitch, I am kind of curious about the timing of the spring game and then the timing of when the transfer portal opens. What kind of curveball does that throw in, not just to Nebraska, but any football program across the country having their spring game around that time?
Well, we'll see. Matt Rhule didn't sound too interested in it today. He was asked about the portal and how it opens up on Saturday, April 15th. That's a national thing. So there's a lot of programs that are going through spring practice right now. And as you said, Connor, they're all going to deal with that to some degree. Nebraska has some position groups where depth is a real issue. I'd look at offensive line first and then probably go to the defensive line and linebacker. And there's no time to waste for these players who want to go into the portal because they've got to find homes, and that's no guarantee that if you wait a week or two or toward the end of those 15 days that there's going to be a spot for you that would be there on April 15th. So I would expect that as soon as the portal opens, there's going to be some guys from Nebraska jumping in, and then they're going to be out presumably, certainly as far as their availability for the spring game. But, as long as there's no big surprises, no big curveballs, I don't think it'll impact the spring game too much. And if there are, and you have a couple of the top unit players who are in the portal next week, then they're not going to play in the spring game. And, that's okay too for Nebraska because, you don't necessarily want a bunch of guys out there on April 22nd who aren't going to be a part of your team in the fall.
Mitch, whenever we talk transfer portal, obviously departures have been what's focused on with Nebraska being over the limit, and that's why you kind of look at those position groups that are thin. But do you see Nebraska being active in trying to go pick up some players, whether they be starters or depth pieces in the portal, despite the fact that they're still over the scholarship limit?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to sit on their hands in this portal session, just like they didn't in the early one. They were over, potentially over the limit. In the winter too, the 85 scholarship limit, and then still we're active in picking up, double-digit transfers. I don't think it'll be that big in terms of the numbers in the summer here, but I could see them adding a handful of players, and then that's just going to be, for every player that they add, that's one more that they've got to find space for on the roster. I really don't think it's going to be as difficult of a challenge as maybe it would seem, just specifically based on the numbers. You start to go through the scholarships and what a depth chart might look at. And, if there's guys who have been here 2 and 3 years and they haven't made an impact, they haven't gotten on the field, then, they're going to be candidates to move on. And they could stay in school at Nebraska and keep their scholarships, or they could look elsewhere, and, move down a level and have an opportunity to contribute. So, I mean, Nebraska was a 4-win team last year. It's not like this is a roster that's just like overflowing with players who you can't find a way to remove from the scholarship roles. You're not. It's not like it's an 11-win team with 98 guys on scholarship, and there's just nowhere to look to trim fat.
Mitch Sherman with us, The Athletic, Hail Varsity Radio, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how do you feel right now, or what's your gut say about Nebraska in the recruiting world? They've really done well. At least you go back to the end of March with all those unofficial visits that were on campus. Still some high-profile targets in Brandon Baker and Carter Nelson. I know our guy Ginther ended up committing to Tennessee. And the Kansas City kid, defensive tackle, ended up going to Michigan. Do you think Nebraska is still in pretty good position, or does that early hope fade a little bit from a month previous?
Yeah, Andrew Sprague, the lineman out of KC, committed to Michigan. And some others too. We've seen Nebraska guys who came in on visits on the weekend that Dylan Raiola headlined things at the end of March have started to commit elsewhere. Ideally, in a perfect scenario for Nebraska, they would have gotten the quarterback, and I think things would have rolled from there. And that would have been like the dream for Nebraska in this 2024 class to build a group around a 5-star prospect or a couple of 5-star prospects. The momentum is not carrying in that direction, and that was probably a little bit too optimistic. Not the hope to get Raiola. I mean, that was real, and it still exists. The hope still exists, but the longer that he goes without committing to Nebraska, I think the more likely it is that he ends up at Georgia or another program, and that's disappointing. But you're not going to build this empire overnight. And Nebraska, in going after 4- and 5-star prospects, is up against programs that are competing for national championships. And right now, the main objective for Matt Rhule is to increase awareness and exposure and answer the questions of these players as they come to see his campus. He wants to spread the word about what he's building at Nebraska. And you're not going to most likely look like the best option for highly coveted players until you start winning some games, or until you start, building up a top 20 class. Mm-hmm. So, at some point, I think the ball is going to start rolling. I think they'll get some commits this spring. I think they've achieved their number one objective, which was to get the word out about their program. Now they've got to, find a way to get a big fish or two. But as he's finding out, it's not easy when you're up against the likes of Georgia and USC in recruiting in today's world.
Mitch, real quick, but about 90 seconds. Do you think Rhule's pleased with some of the leadership that's emerged through this spring?
I do, yeah. You heard him talk about that all the way going back into the winter with the mat drills and the different competitions that they did. And, I wrote about Thomas Fedoni today emerging as a leader. Guys like Miles Farmer and Gabe Irvin. I think they like what they've seen from a couple of the quarterbacks. Including Casey Thompson, who's out this spring with injury. But the leadership, the buy-in that they've seen from a lot of the returning players and a number of the new guys. We heard from MJ Sherman a couple of weeks ago. Liked what he had to say. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, I thought had some great comments today about how he's bought in and what he's seeing from the receivers. So. That all plays into leadership, but, much like with recruiting, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's going to be a process throughout this year and into 2024.
Mitch, we'll see you later on in the week. Thanks for jumping on with us today, bud.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
There he is, Mitch Sherman, Video Mitch, joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Good to spend a few minutes with him as we'll dive in. NFL Sunday Ticket, YouTubeTV, and your friendly, dare I say pirater?
No. I just have a legal workaround. Elijah Herbel's legal workaround to the new YouTubeTV Sunday Ticket.
Well, yeah, you have...
It's a weird save. Weird... Wow, I can't talk today. Weird way of saying pirater.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let that...
We'll get you the hookup on NFL coming up.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidt on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut preteen Swedish boy.
Open phones the rest of this hour, 489-1240. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel, and at C_Clark_27 for Connor Clark. Thanks to Mitch Sherman. That will be posted on the video feed, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and the audio portion on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Full show available as well. So let's talk about your NFL fix, what you need. Not going to lie, for a while I had the NFL Sunday ticket.
As did I.
That's when I was a DirecTV customer. Had a deal, this is almost 10 to 12 years back, where it was an endorsement deal. So I had DirecTV, which was great, but I also had cable, which continued to punch me below the belt, and I couldn't really get out of either. My late father said, you know what? You're going to save a bunch of money by going to YouTubeTV. So this is not a paid endorsement. That's what I have. That's what I use, and it's pretty awesome. If you have something you like, great, but it makes sense that YouTubeTV and the NFL Sunday ticket are now dancing. And that'll be an option. My family, for some reason, my wife and son still like the Seahawks. So there's not a lot of Seattle games we get occasionally, probably 3 or 4 a year, not counting some prime time. When they were in prime time, we would watch it home. We'd catch it there. But we love going to the bar on Sundays and watching the afternoon games, and then kind of bleeding into the Sunday night affair, and then we get up and get ready to rock and roll for the week that is on Monday. But that's what we do. We have a couple of bars we really like south of town, and that's what we do. That is not as economical as what this Sunday ticket's going to be, but that's how we go about it versus hunkering down at home. I have not made friends enough, or at least people are sick of me, where I can't go just mooch. I can't go mooch any longer off the buddy that's got the Red Zone channel or the Sunday ticket.
Well, for my generation, it's less about that, and it's more about, would you rather pay to have every single game, or would you rather go find some sketchy websites online that might have some pop-up ads, but you know what? They got every single game for free on there. That's the question for the people of my generation.
Your generation's really good at being inventive. We'll put it that way. Not pirating, not pulling an OJ.
No, somebody else, the person who's broadcasting that on their website, they're breaking the law. Me finding that website, that's not breaking the law. Legitimately.
You're just partaking. But even with those websites that offer day after movies, what I mean by that is some of the new releases in the theaters. There's websites that will, the old Seinfeld episode where there's Kramer with the camcorder trying to sell the bootlegged version of some French film that got Jerry and him in some hot water with some Russian folks, I do believe. So it happens, but I'm not going to spend it. It's not that I don't like it. I think the Red Zone channel is something I may invest in. I don't know what Junior's schedule's like this fall. If he's doing football or if he's going to try and do fall baseball, don't know. That dictates a lot of what my Sundays look like.
I'll just say, speaking from my generation, I don't see the point whenever so many people in my generation already watch whatever games they want for free to go pay extra for YouTube TV. And I don't understand YouTube TV's business model either here, where we talk about the fact that...
They started it out at 50. It's now 75.
Well, I'm just looking at it in a case of...
They slowly grow.
What are you trying to do? Are you trying to make money off of the Sunday ticket, or are you trying to make money off your entire brand? Do you want to go take it to these traditional cable companies, DirecTV, I know satellite, but do you want to get into that market for the convincing the rest of America to be cord cutters? Because if you do, you're still lagging behind in subscribers with the likes of DirecTV and Comcast and Time Warner and whatever company by a lot. So if you want to get into that market, wouldn't you price it cheaper to get people in on YouTube TV? And now we see how nice YouTube TV is because we wanted Sunday ticket, and we move forward. Whereas I don't see this doing that whenever there's so many alternatives. And I talked about the legal alternative to preview this segment. Hey, if you're listening at home, it is perfectly legal to get yourself a VPN, a virtual private network. It makes whatever website you're on, think you're from somewhere else. It's done in
So
order
it doesn't black you out.
It's done to protect your own IP. Less than that, you can go set it so that your internet connection is being hosted in, say, London, England, and now you can buy the international version of Game Pass Sunday Ticket, and it's $150 cheaper for the season. You can get it for under $200 if you're from England. Like it's not like
trying to grow the game, huh?
Well, you're trying to grow the game internationally, but what's the point of pricing it so high when it's so easy for me to get a VPN and go say I'm from London, England, and now I can get it for the cheaper price? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
So
whenever YouTube TV is supposed to be this new, like, innovative, you can stream it, it's cord cutting. Well, I'm gonna go innovative. I'm gonna use a VPN, another new technology, and get it for cheaper.
Well, sorry, I've been missing this conversation. How much is it normally? Because I don't have Sunday Ticket.
No, it's what is it? $250 to $700 for the season. Is that the range?
Well, it's $160 more now. I believe it was
because it can be.
Was it? I believe it was $200 with DirecTV to add it for the season. I believe now it's $360 for the whole season.
My buddy Jaybird just would get on the horn. I think he's the one dude in the neighborhood that still has DirecTV. He gets on the horn and he's a master negotiator, and he always gets something knocked down, and occasionally they'll throw in a free fight for him if we're trying to watch either boxing or Ultimate Fighting. You had your ear talked off. What happened?
Oh, it was just a question about the Hail Varsity morning show that needed to be answered.
Okay.
So I made sure that everybody knew it was streaming only.
Well, it's on, and then it's on from 9 to 10.
Locally.
Yeah, here in Lincoln.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we were just getting that squared away.
Okay.
Rob Cummings was the caller. He said hello.
Hey, Rob. What's up, brother?
Well,
he's been listening for 20 years. Good dude.
So he didn't want to be in the air because of that question, but he says hello and he wishes you well.
I figured someone was quizzing Connor on his Huskerdom.
I mean, you could do that too if you want to call and,
it's good.
Keep me occupied. Not that I'm not already.
We got an email in from Jay, the master negotiator Erickson. I got it free. So the good news here is I don't have to get a fake IP address. I wish I would have investigated more back when Peaky Blinders was airing over on BBC. I didn't. The good news, though, is I have outed Jay Erickson as the guy I can go smooch and mooch off of when it comes to Sunday NFL.
And if the FBI's listening, they know their guy now. You just outed him by name.
No, he's a subscriber. He's good. He's just a great negotiator with they're trying to keep him on coming back. Come on back.
I might need to do that VPN thing because
you know what we can do is if you bring a side, we can just have a barbecue bonanza Sundays at Jaybird's house.
That sounds like a good solution for all parties.
Shoot me the invite.
Yeah, Jay, we've just taken over your basement. We'll bring some bones for your basset hound. Okay, hour 2 on the way. Hail Varsity continue. 2 on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you one final time this hour. We're going to try and run down Jabba Chamberlain next hour. He's watching his boy play baseball, so we'll see what's available. Plenty of Nebraska football to get into. Is Ohio State trending the wrong way? That's part of the mailbag with The Athletic, and thoughts on Nebraska and the Texas pipeline. We'll get there. First, Michael's with us to round out hour 1. Michael, thanks for hanging on the line. Welcome into Hail Varsity. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm a cable service provider here in town, and I just wanted to let you guys know about that VPN. Deb Fisher, our Centster, co-sponsored a bill that if you use a VPN, you get 20 years in prison and up to $1 million fine.
That's Elijah Herbel.
The bill is just proposed.
You just dug yourself into a huge hole.
The bill is just proposed. It's not gone through yet. I'd like to make that clear. Second, I'd also like to make it clear that bill is ridiculous and clearly shows that the lawmakers in our country don't understand internet laws and VPNs.
Okay, who ratted? Who ratted him out?
Michael, since I got you, I need to confess that my kid's stealing my father-in-law's password. I want to block the Yankees from my house. Can we make that happen?
Maybe.
Maybe?
I'm not too sure about that, but, go Yankees.
It backfired. Michael, thank you for scaring Elijah straight. I appreciate it.
That was phenomenal.
Hey, we'll come visit you.
I just don't understand what's so wrong about wanting to have privacy and protection on my own internet.
Look who just got a promotion, and I didn't even have to try. This is amazing.
That's funny.
If I go to jail for having a VPN, I'd just like to let you guys know.
You're not doing anything illegal yet.
Yet.
Going to jail for a VPN is now
what are you in for, Herbel?
It's like one of the top 2 funniest ways to go to prison as like somebody my age. 1 is VPN, 2 is tax evasion. I think it's funny to go to. I shouldn't say it's funny to go to jail for tax evasion,
but this time of year.
But like, can you imagine someone like me or Connor who were like,
no, and you in prison, you're done.
I just wanted to watch the Bears.
Yeah,
yeah.
There will be no gang indoctrination. There'll be no assault. It'll all be. This kid's all sorts of messed up, man. He went to great lengths just to watch Chicago, and they're a 3-win football team. Maybe better next year. Well,
that's the type of thing. You come out with face tats if you're watching a 3-win football team. That you're like going into prison. You're hard.
Case, you know what? Connor's gonna roll in, and he's gonna have some sort of fake Russian tattoo on his left pec.
The mafia on speed dial.
And he'll have the old teardrop tattoo on the right side of his cheek. And you just hope it works. You just hope it works. You watch Shawshank before you get transported. See if you can run into a guy like Red who knows how to get things, keep you protected. There we go. We'll try and catch up with Jabba Chamberlain. That's our plans. A lot of room for you next hour, so can get in if you like. 489-1240, 489-1240. Reminder about your friends from Dyer Law, Elijah Herbel. Personal injury, if you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on Dyer Law and the team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it. No matter what you're dealing with, call Dyer Law and their team today at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your personal injury claim. That's Dyer.law, Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. Some Husker baseball on our mind, lots of spring football, and some recruiting thoughts next hour with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. And we'll see if we can squeeze in Jabba Chamberlain in Hour 2 to talk some Husker baseball. UNO Big Red tonight, 6 o'clock at Haymarket. So good job of steak if and when he becomes available after the Varsity Southwest game. But plenty of room here this hour for you. 489-1240. 489-1240. Numbers to get in. Can call. Can also get in on the stream when you watch and stream the show on video. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Great post-practice report with Aaron Sorensen, Brady Holtman. Check that out. And then the Hail Varsity Twitter handle, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. So ways to catch the show there. So we'll get into some more thoughts. And Mitch Sherman talked about it in Hour 1, the Nebraska wide receiver room, one of the position groups that you feel good about despite its newness. And it's all new, right, because of the coaching transition. But a lot's been made about Garret McGuire. And the more I'm around him, the more I hear him speak. And the proof will be Saturday and then Saturdays to come. But what can he get out of the room? And we'll hear from Rhule in a second. But one thing that stuck out with me today from Coach Rhule on McGuire is, well, I didn't know if he was going to leave the NFL. That's a safe haven, and there's no such thing in coaching, but that's a much safer haven in the NFL from a financing standpoint and a little bit more stability. It's pro ball. Guys want to get to pro ball because guess what? The portal opens up in college this Saturday. You are having to re-recruit your team, continue to recruit. It's gone from a 9-month-a-year, 10-month-a-year deal, 11-month-a-year thing. You usually get a month off. You don't get any downtime at all. And if you're a young coach trying to earn your stripes on a staff, you certainly don't get any downtime. And so you're always go, go, go. I mean, that's part of your worth is the energy you bring. But he's well beyond his years in coaching. Does it make him as great a coach as somebody that's done it for 20 years? No. I mean, it's all about knowledge and experience, but he has an advantage because of his background, how he's been brought up. And I think guys, the way he can connect and relate to those 18 to 22-year-olds, it's not that a 50-year-old can't do it. It's not that a 30-year-old can't do it or somewhere in between. But if you're Garret McGuire, your selling point right now is, look, I did well, and some of these guys that you watch on Sundays can vouch for me. If it works out the way it needs to work out for Nebraska, there'll be future Sunday guys that work out for Nebraska that then come back and vouch for a guy like Garret McGuire.
And one of the things that has come back to me as I look at the Garret McGuire situation, I go back to my own time before my senior year of high school, going through football camps and whatnot. And I think to the guys among those football camps that stood out in my own memory, they weren't always the guy with 30-plus years of coaching experience, the guy that has been there, worked in the NFL. Because I went to the Nebraska football camp with Kavanaugh, was the coach there working with the linemen, and you also had Farniok being one of the players that was there helping, and I learned a whole bunch more from this guy at Iowa State named Alex Golish, who at the time wasn't a big deal. I believe he was the special teams coach at Illinois before he joined up with Coach Campbell at Iowa State, and he was their tight ends coach. Wasn't even an offensive line coach. I learned so much more from him, and it came down to the fact that he cared about that high school camp and making sure the guys got the best experience out of it. And I'm not saying that Nebraska didn't care about the offensive line going through there, but you could tell it.
But are you a project and prospect for us or not? Well, and if so, we'll spend a little more time with you.
There was that, and then there was just that element of, we're here to find guys. We're not here to make you guys better. We don't care about your high school seasons. It didn't feel like that. I mean, we had maybe 20 minutes of individual work time where we got to do some drills with the coaches, and they got to give us some pointers. And we're back into the stadium. We're running 40s. We're doing vertical jump, and we're going to do some one-on-ones where the coaches are going to be, following the guys that are a little more visually impressive than someone like me. And then you go to Iowa State, Golish, who should be noted, now the head coach at USF, South Florida. So he's made his way up in the world, and you could see it from that moment at the Iowa State football camp. I'm some nobody from Lincoln, Nebraska that he had never heard of, and he is pulling me aside, getting me some one-on-one time with like the second tier of the linemen that they had, because they broke us up based on size and weight and whatnot. The second tier of the linemen, he's working with me and saying, yeah, this is how you're going to get that first step better, yada, yada, yada. And then at the end of the camp, I go, hey, I'm driving back to Lincoln and I'm way too sweaty. Can I find somewhere to shower? And he goes and walks me through the Iowa State facility and takes me to the team locker room, and I get to go shower with I don't want to say shower with the team because that sounds weird, but they're all in there following some voluntary summer workouts, and there's
recruiting pitch.
And there's just some random high schooler in there showering with the Iowa State football team, which sounds goofy, but it's just one of those little things where that guy cared so much about that camp and making sure everybody had a good experience that he stands out in my memory. So just because Garret McGuire isn't the most experienced coach doesn't mean he can't be a good coach. If he cares and he shows the guys in his room that he's got some knowledge, he'll get you better, and he cares about who you are both on and off the field, you can respond to that a lot better than somebody who has been in the NFL for 10 years and has developed some high-level offensive linemen. There's more to coaching than just what you know and how much experience you have.
Well, hey, this story was, the pinnacle of it was, hey, I got a chance to shower with the Iowa State team. So, son,
experience I'll never forget.
You come to Iowa State, you too can look at back hair. I mean, it's wonderful. Let's hear from Coach Rhule on Garret McGuire, his attributes, his assets, and really, if we look at what Saturday is. I know Dion's kind of the main story with ESPN and everyone checking in on Coach Prime. You can eye roll all you want. I'm eye rolling with you too on it. But Nebraska has something to show. What's the progress really been like? How put together in a limited time frame do they look to give you some more optimism going into the season? That's something to show, and then something to sell. Everyone's going to see it on BTN and beyond. Nebraska opponents, Nebraska fans, but potential Nebraska recruits. That leads us into this Texas pipeline we'll get into next segment. But here is Coach Rhule on Garret McGuire.
I think it's been great. I mean, I think unfairly, I don't know if it's unfairly, but he's had a lot of people question, him, right? Which really honestly hurts us in recruiting. We're out there recruiting and people are following us and they're like, well, I keep hearing this narrative. It's coming from our own people. I'm like, so we have to battle that a little bit. But, I always look at things in my life at like what I want my son to play for him, and I'd want my son to play for Garret. I don't know if you guys probably don't see the second half of practice, do you? Like we do team outside and they throw 7-on-7 inside. He runs the whole passing game. Like he knows the quarterbacks, progressions, running backs, tight ends, receivers. So I think I think the receivers are one of our stronger groups are coming on, and I think he's done a really good job. So I think as he starts to churn out NFL prospects, the top recruits in the country will realize that if they play for Garret, they're not going to just get someone who's a hype guy. They're going to get a really good coach who's also going to care about them off the field.
Good stuff. It's off the field. It's on the field. And that's fair. They are having to combat that. They've targeted wide receivers. And have they landed many? They've landed some they like. They've landed some track dudes. Mm-hmm. And there's been relationships that are less of a barrier to break down because of Garret and his Texas connections. He's a made guy in Texas despite his age because of who his daddy is, but more so the respect he has, because I don't think Papa Bear's the type of dad to just, here's my son, take care of him, and it's rules, but on the line here to get this program turned around. So you're not going to start off on the foot of favors. You're going to start off with who's the best guy I like, who's the best guy. And by the way, this guy was with him in Carolina. So there's absolute trust there. And also the reality of being able to coach a coach. I mean, Rhule likes that aspect of it and likes the ability to have control of it. And you look at what Nebraska has been versus what they are, and the receivers they have are all transfer guys, or it's somebody that you inherit. And I go back to Stanley Morgan. Stanley's a guy that Bo recruited, Riley got, and Frost ended up with. So Stanley's a great example of perseverance and super talent. Stanley's a hell of a good ball player. But I look at Ted Gilmore back in the day. Ted really recruited well. I mean, he brought in the Kenny Bells of the world, the Quincy Anunwas of the world. I mean, those were guys that were recruited to Nebraska, didn't transfer, got developed, were really good, and then went to the NFL. But Nebraska's, because of their own transition, has had to transition. They've not had many wideouts stick and stay, right? I mean, Spielman didn't last or work out despite his numbers. You have Palmer, who is electric and is a top 100 prospect in the NFL draft the end of this month. Palmer's a guy that Mickey brought in. And there's some other guys that Mickey brought in. And then you hit a jackpot with Samare Toure. And you've got Isaiah Garcia Castaneda that is looking to kind of stabilize and showed some flashes early. But it's all been portal. Not all, but for the most part, it's been portal. You've not kept a receiver and developed a receiver for 2 or 3 years. They've got that chance with the Malachi Coleman and some future prospects, but they're going to need to show off. And I think Garrett's got a group, portal or not, that he's going to work with and do well with.
I think a name in that list, too, that I would honestly replace is JD with Wan'Dale Robinson.
Fair, very fair. Well, that's 2.
Because JD, because he was here for 3 years, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
He's also inherited. I mean, he was a Riley guy that Frost got.
Right.
And then they didn't jive.
Right. I mean, he was, you guys would know better than I would because this was before I got here. But, just watching JD Spielman before coming to Lincoln, and it was like, this guy, he's not the biggest guy in the field, but he has some pretty electric play, potential.
Really good,
He was really, really good, and it was kind of sad to see him go. But I think Wandale falls into that too, because I know you got him out of high school and you had him for, his true freshman year and then the COVID year, which was all screwy, obviously, for everybody. And you maybe didn't utilize him as he was meant to be utilized. And he's an NFL talent.
Because he's the only running back you had that could do the job.
So,
and then less than the fact that he was utilized seemingly incorrectly, that's a factor. Where was his development? You didn't see Wandale get bigger, faster, stronger during his time at Nebraska. It just felt like he was the same old guy. You knew what to expect from Wandale Robinson, but during the offseason, you didn't see him get much better. It was the same old Wandale, and maybe it's because they had him in a role that didn't fit his strong suit, so he wasn't able to develop, but that was just a huge problem with the last staff in general, the fact that guys weren't getting better. And Wandale, I think you can put into that category because we watched him at Nebraska, and you looked at him and you said, yeah, he's a good talent, one of the better weapons on the offense. Didn't quite look like an NFL guy. Looked small, looked like he was a bit outclassed for the Big Ten even. And then he goes off to Kentucky. No, now he's an NFL guy again because A, they got him in the right spot, and B, they developed him. They made him better. You watched him that year at Kentucky. He looked better than he did at Nebraska.
Well, yeah, he looked phenomenal at Kentucky. And I think the lack of development part, too, I think you could throw an argument at, well, he came in as one, like, when he was a true freshman for this team, I mean, he was really, really good. And everybody knew that. And I do agree with you. You didn't really see him kind of change at all. I mean, like, you got what you got from Wandale, which you're not going to complain about because it was all good.
Did you make him better or just screw him up?
I mean, I don't want to say screwed him up, but I don't think he got exponentially better at Nebraska because, again, you saw the jump.
He went a different direction than he came in with.
Right, and you saw the jump from Lincoln to Lexington and just what happened there, and he was the guy in Kentucky and was just a monster.
I mean, I think if we want to talk elite wide receiver coaches, I think Mickey is one, okay? I think Keith Williams is right there. Keith's receiving core was really good. Bo's staff recruited a great wide receiver room, but those guys went to a really high level. When I think of DeMornay, when I think of Westy, when I think of Alonzo Moore, Brandon Riley's really, really good. And then Stanley. I mean, that was a good receiver room, and that followed the Anunwas and the Kenny Bells, right? And Nebraska had some tight ends they could use too. We're up against it here. Let's squeeze in real quick with Garret McGuire and how this spring has gone for him.
I'm having the time of my life. Not only because of the room, right? Everyone asks what I love about Lincoln. The first thing I say is my players, but then too, I get to be around Coach Satt and Coach Rhule every day who, like, you just look at, we are identical. All three of us are coaches' kids, right? We care a lot about football and we care a lot about kids. So me getting to wake up every day and go see those two guys is a dream come true for me.
We'll hear a little bit more from Coach McGuire, and this is all part of that showcase that will be the spring game. Yes, it'll be hitting. Yes, there'll be live quarterback play. Yes, it'll be a competition, but it's also a chance for Nebraska to show what they've done in a short window. And that short window can make some impressions. It's one thing to get you on campus for an official visit, and it is the grain of salt preemptive say, oh, yeah, it's just a spring game. We know that, but it's at least something for the recruits to see with how Nebraska can play. Wide receiver room, we think, can be a strength. You feel good about the offensive line, and Rhule's not about lip service, despite how good a communicator he is. He believes in the O-line. So those are two position groups. Portal opens up. We'll get there. And, of course, that Texas pipeline with Nebraska and Texas, part of the Athletics national recruiting mailbag and question marks. And room for you this hour, 489-1240.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio on a Tuesday. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Get in at 489-1240, or we'll get to some of your stream questions here as you watch Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle @HVarsity Radio. More from Garret McGuire's post-practice session. And Garret was asked about some of the advantages, not only playing for Coach Rhule, but also now working with Coach Rhule, that Baylor connection.
Obviously not that far removed from playing, so kind of see the game the same way. Some of the defenses that we see nowadays is obviously what I saw as a player. And then obviously being around Coach Satt and Coach Rhule previously, that really, really helped me with the familiarity of this offense that we're going to run.
The age thing we started off this second hour was touched on and highlighted by Rhule, and how it can be a negative reality in the recruiting world. How you overcome that is through production on the field during spring session, summer session, working with guys and then getting them ready, and they ball out and do well in the fall. But that's again the show me part of this equation as to why Nebraska is maybe not as full head of steam. They're not bad, but they're not maybe where they were, or getting some yeses on the recruiting trail, because they've got to show what they can do. And McGuire's one of those guys that, hey, he uses what he's worked with, and that is some NFL guys when it comes to tutoring and going through tape from a concept standpoint. He touched on that earlier today after practice.
My opinion, I've just seen a lot. Obviously, a lot of people run the same stuff. I'm a firm believer in showing the guys NFL tape. So if you saw me about 4 or 5 hours ago in the morning, I was breaking down some NFL tape, because I think if they see the best of the best do it, they learn better than going to see a guy that, on the same playing level. So obviously being around those offenses and the different trees, so it's a little easier for me to kind of teach, in my opinion, just being exposed to that.
6 years, 4 offenses, good background, and development a key focal point, as you'd imagine, this spring.
We are a developmental program, so as you see, we are getting a lot of reps. We got, just in my room alone, we got 180 reps last Thursday. So, that's as good as teaching as you can get once you're on the grass and actually doing it. So just to see, young guys like Sean Hardy, Victor Jones, Alex Bullock go out there and get 30, 40 reps a day, right? That's developmental. So I think we're all in different stages in that room, obviously with guys that are in their 6th year and then guys that are in year 2 or 3.
You wonder what type of reality this receiver room can be in the offense. Do you have a quarterback that's protected? Do you have a run game you can lean on? Can you hit play action? Nebraska, that was their offense last year. It can't be their offense this year unless they have someone emerge and go off, like a Betts or a Garcia Castaneda. You have 34% of the offense that was Trey Palmer last year. You have 70+% returning with almost 1,000-yard rusher and Casey Thompson, which is a luxury a lot of Big Ten teams would like to have. But it was really boom or bust here for the offense a year ago.
And I feel like one of the guys that's flown under the radar a little bit, and I think we can get Garret McGuire's thoughts on him as well, because Garret spent some time on this morning, is Marcus Washington. It's because he always kind of felt like he played second fiddle to Trey Palmer last season, but he quietly had a very good year of his own, did really well with those crossing patterns, and I think that McGuire sees that, and I don't think that it's crazy to think that he could be a future receiver, because whenever you think of the names, you think of Betts, and Garcia Castaneda is the guy that you wonder what he could have been
Texas
last year.
Dude, he's good.
Yeah, he's a Texas dude, and he's flown under the radar a little bit, but he's already got that connection with Casey Thompson, and we saw what he could be last year. And here's what Garret McGuire had to say about Marcus Washington and what he sees in him.
I'm his 3rd or 4th receiver coach. I think I'm his 4th receiver coach, and obviously that's tough on everybody. So first thing I had to do was build trust with him. And that came from me learning about his 1-year-old son, Mason. So obviously he's got stuff that off the field that he's working for, which, everything when it comes to being a player, if there's a why behind it, you're going to work harder, right? So, and then obviously when it comes on the field, man, he's a competitive sucker, which, anytime you can bring that to the receiver room, we want it.
Good answer and good example. And listen, I don't know how rocky year 1 is going to be. I know College Football News put out a 2023 projection already for Nebraska, and they have Nebraska going 7-5 and 4-5 in conference. The Iowa win is highlighted. A Boulder win is highlighted. And then the rest of the schedule, the teams that you think might be a little tough to beat in year one are probably the teams that are going to be a little tough to beat in year one, be it Minnesota and Wisconsin and Illinois. But they have a win for Purdue. But it ultimately comes down to this. Whatever level you're at, first and foremost, you got to be coachable. Second of all, you got to like what you're doing or be good at it, one of the two, and have it meet in the middle somewhere, like what you do and be good at it. And then third, with this staff, I think one of the realities is they are a staff that truly does care. They're going to connect. They're going to be able to talk to and communicate and get you on their team, or say it's okay to not be on our team and see you. That's just it. I absolutely believe that the transparency part. But Garret McGuire's a guy that guys that might be older than him or just the same age as him or even younger than him, they're going to want to play for him because they trust him. Do you like this guy that you're playing for? Do you believe he can get you better? And do you trust that he's got your best interest in mind versus selling you a bridge somewhere or some beachfront property in other spots of the country that don't have beaches? And that's just it. Did I get lied to and BS'd, and do I wither away on the bench because I'm not really their guy? And I think there's been that at Nebraska in the past that's kept guys from thriving. And I think there's been instances, too, where guys haven't been coachable. So that's a two-way street for me. And it's not just a Nebraska thing or a program like a Nebraska, like a Tennessee, like a Colorado, like a Florida that have had coaching cycles every 5 years. You've never gotten a chance to see top-tier talent reach that top tier because there's always been some constant turnover and a meshing of personalities. You've never been able to settle in and just go do your thing.
Well, and I think, too, that's like a part of the reason why Coach McGuire's just been, to me, honestly, impressive as hell in these press conferences, too, because from the outside looking in, and this is kind of how I would look at it as a player, is I would view him, and this isn't trying to like be demeaning or anything, I view him as a peer more so than a coach because he's 24 years old. You said he's basically a year older than a lot of the roster, right? And I feel like guys, especially athletes, are going to trust, not that they don't trust their coaching staff in general, but they're going to trust dudes who are their age more, and they can kind of lean on them more because they can relate to them a little bit better than, say, a Coach Rhule or anybody else. And I think that is a really big leadership opportunity for McGuire to have as well, because if other players see, what he's doing at such a young age and leading a group of guys that are essentially his age and doing it effectively and giving them constructive feedback or getting on them or supporting them when they're doing well, even when they're not doing well, I think that is, an essential part to this coaching staff. And I think it's, again, an incredible leadership opportunity and one that can set a really, really good example throughout the entire team. Because, again, the dude's 24 years old. I mean, he sounds younger than I do. And, I'm younger than he is.
Well, he doesn't smoke as much as you either.
Okay. I mean.
See, it wasn't a thing because Lincoln Riley came from East Carolina and then was Bob Stoops' assistant and was kind of the wonder kid. But he wasn't the guy in the headset, and then bang, he got elevated and started cranking out quarterbacks, and there you go, much to the dismay of Texas Tech or Texas A&M. There were a lot of transfer quarterbacks, but guess what? They thrived and performed, and they were either the number one pick overall or they went to a Super Bowl in Jalen Hurts' case. So you take a Bama cast-off. Listen, I think it's very fair to say at Nebraska the last few years, you've got position groups that have performed okay or flat out underachieved. You've not had they were great. You've not had a great position group. Hence your team's record and the underachieving despite top 20 recruiting classes. And you've had this buffer where the safe haven may have been the position coach opposed to who are you going to play for? Well, I'm going to play for my teammate because I've connected with him. Not always. Not like it used to be, but that's probably been your motivation. Or, the O-line. Well, I'm gonna play my ass off for Greg Austin, let's just say. Mm-hmm. But man, what was the relationship like between Austin and Frost? Wasn't great, okay? Especially that last year. And it was problematic, and you saw the inconsistency on offense. So, again, motivation. I'll play for my position coach, but were there guys on the team that felt like, all right, this guy's full of crap? Possibly. Are there guys that they brought in that weren't coachable, and as a head coach, you're done with, let me move on? Again, we're talking a two-way street on these situations, but it all adds up to a bit of a nightmare. Good question from Brennan we can dive into. After the last few months, I've had a chance to get to know, or at least hear from the coaching staff, who's everyone's favorite coach. I don't know that I've got a favorite. I've heard all of them, got to meet all of them. I think the guy that I relate to a little bit is Wager. I mean, he's to me a throwback. He reminds me of a high school principal or somebody that you really liked being in class with in high school. And I'm saying the teaching background. He's all about teaching, but I think he's pretty big time. I think he's pretty stand up, and he's going to be key for Texas for sure, for Nebraska. Wager's good. I think Barthel's big time. Defensively, I think White, once he gets everyone settled in, I think he's going to be a mad scientist in a great way. I think this first year defensively, it'll take a few games for him to get settled in. They got to have the personnel as well.
And again, to your point, favorite's hard to say, but we're running out of time. Maybe we'll get into the next segment.
489-1240, number to get in.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, news coming down on social media. The Big Ten has a commissioner. The reports earlier by Pete Thamel of ESPN. So Jim Phillips was the target. He's the ACC commissioner. He was the AD at Northwestern and did awesome. And loved hearing from him at Media Days when Nebraska first joined. And Jim Phillips pretty much, in my opinion, got passed over for Kevin Warren. Brutal decision. Never been a Kevin Warren fan. That's just me. Sorry. And I know he ticked off a lot of Nebraska fans during COVID, but clearly not getting the job done if he's going from commissioner gig to an NFL franchise.
And I know terrible one like the Bears at that.
Oh. I knew that was good.
It just seems like a weird move to go from a conference commissioner to one of 32 versus one of 5, right? Now, NFL's his world, so maybe it's more familiarity there. I don't envy him either, having to play with the cheese and wine crowd of the chancellors and presidents. You gotta live in both worlds there. So Jim Phillips passed over the first time by the Big Ten. They went back to him this time to replace Warren, and he's like, yeah, I'm good. You guys should have had me at hello instead of the second choice. So there you go. He's staying and going to get a bump from the ACC. It is what it is. But
he
now,
it, though.
No, he was really good. He's the guy that about everybody said who replaces Delaney. That's the guy Big Jim, Godfather Jim, wanted to replace him, and they went a different direction. And while Delaney probably wasn't chancellor and president's favorite person, he printed them money, and
right.
Got them everywhere, expanded the brand and expanded the conference. So the new name is Tony Petitti, and he is all about TV. He's all about making deals and knowing how TV works. That is great news when it comes to the Big Ten and how they can secure their future now and their future in 10 years and their next several TV deals. But we know what's on the docket. We know that, listen, you're not going to have ESPN in the Big Ten hooked arms. You're not. Maybe it comes back, but right now that's not what it's going to be. It's going to be Fox, and it's going to be CBS, and it's the way things are. And Elijah, you've got a little bit more info here on Petitti with what he has done and what he's secured, and he's been with gaming, which is impressive because that Twitch is a form of streaming. That's going to be a revenue stream and an option. He's been with MLB. He's been with CBS Sports. He's grown that. That's not a flyover channel anymore. It's for real. And he's done well with the NCAA basketball tournament and NFL coverage. Think when CBS has been pretty much watch TV from an over-the-air network because of what they've had with the Masters, what they have had with SEC football, and then, of course, the AFC and the NFL.
Yeah, he's kind of dipped his toe into everything when it comes to TV and media. That's where he comes from. His world is the world of a former television executive that really focused on sports. He spent some time, as you alluded to, with MLB Network. He actually moved to MLB Network during their founding and spent about 6 years with them before he was eventually promoted to COO of the MLB as a whole. He filled the shoes of Rob Manfred, who became the commissioner, obviously.
What a trade.
And then in 2020, as MLB was trying to get back on the field, he left for Activision Blizzard, a video game company. He was trying to get them into the world of esports and getting the broadcast of esports. If you don't know, if video games aren't your world, maybe you'd be more familiar with some of the games that they've made through the years. Call of Duty, they do one of those games every 3-4 years. Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk Pro Skater. They've been moving into the world of esports with Overwatch, if any of those games ring a bell. So he was there to do some of their esports coverage. Didn't quite work out, left that job after a year, and now he's been sitting in his meantime on the United States Golf Association Executive Committee, where he heads up equipment standards, finance, and handicap committees. And we can even find on their website that his official handicap from the USGA is a 7.1, so not a bad golfer.
Get him on the links if you're Trev and say, hey, we need prime time. None of this quirky kickoff time. Let's talk about scheduling. Let's get on the links. No more road openers, Ireland or Minnesota. Let's have a home opener if you're Lincoln on a Thursday. It'll be all right.
Well, let's take you through his full history. He started out at ABC Sports, eventually promoted to Vice President of Programming, where he scheduled and acquired ABC Sports Programming, moved to CBS in 1997 when in a similar role before being named Executive Vice President of CBS Sports as a whole. And he focused on Sunday. The quote from him is basically, I'm responsible for everything you see on Sunday, referring to NFL coverage. He was part of the team that got NFL onto CBS. He also got the NCAA tournament, as you mentioned earlier, Schmidt. Then he moved over and brought in another TV organization that eventually became CBS Sports Network, and he served as the head of CBS Sports Network for a few years, and then left for MLB Network in 2009. Again, served on the MLB Network, head of MLB Network until 2015. Then he became COO of Major League Baseball most recently, again doing video games. So he's kind of dipped his toe everywhere in the sports world, but where he's really made a name for himself is in acquiring and scheduling sports programs for ABC and CBS. Those have been the two big ones for him. So he knows the media world. Big Ten just got a new media rights deal, so it comes a little bit interestingly with the timing there. You would think that he would have been brought on before that, but instead he's going to be coming after that. But with as important as TV rights are in college sports moving forward, this seems like the way college sports is moving. You get a TV executive, someone that's familiar with TV, as the head of your organization, and make sure that you have your finances in order from the TV world before you focus on other things.
Well, you make money.
Yeah, and the TV deal too, though, to be fair, I mean, before he's getting here is still massive, right? Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the amount of different things that he's had his hands in throughout the years, Elijah, with different, networks and sports and media entities. I mean, that can only be a good thing for the Big Ten. And I mean, I'm not one who knows like a ton about these guys. I mean, I know a lot about Jim Phillips because being a Northwestern guy, I mean, he absolutely crushed it, as you said earlier, Schmidt, at Northwestern. And Kevin Warren got off to a rocky start with Nebraska fans, obviously. And now
it's not easy to follow Delaney, but Warren just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, and understandably so.
And I don't think he was. It's an apples and oranges from a qualification standpoint. Yeah, he was in the NFL, but Phillips had been in the Big Ten and helped build the Big Ten. It was a no-brainer to go with him. and to pass over with him, and then watch the ACC not only grow, and I mean Clemson was really good, but then to be able to at least bargain with Notre Dame. I mean, they got to do a lot of Notre Dame, and Phillips was pretty responsible with that because of his Chicago ties. So super impressive there. We'll wind down to Tuesday. We're not to Thursday yet. Got to put the brakes on there. But Mitch Sherman kicked us off in hour one. Get the podcast there and hear what Mitch had to say about recruiting Nebraska this spring session and post-practice. A lot of talk about wide receivers today, and can find the podcast Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the full show, or whatever segments you want to hear. We'll wind out a Tuesday next. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio tomorrow. Evan Bland, Mike Schuhart, Mike Babcock on the show. Dr. Ben Woodhead going to join us as well. We'll talk about Tiger and his prognosis. Chris Schmidt, Connor Clark, Elijah Herbel. Can find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence, at Connor Clark on Twitter at C_Clark_27. Find my Twitter handle. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio. 489-1240, 489-1240. Emails to get into as well, as we have the new commissioner, the Pride of Fairbury, Bill Dolman, always having my back with pronunciation. God love him. Because I screwed that up. What's it supposed to be, Elijah? I'm supposed to be the damn professional.
Petiti. Tony Petiti.
Like petite?
I guess.
Like petiti?
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Kind of sounds like a character in The Sopranos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
something
you got
like
big
that.
Tony Petiti down the street.
Big Tony, little Tony, medium Tony. I mean,
Medium Tony.
Well, that's where you go. Blood type is ragu. You know, poor. You ever remember the episodes where they just piled on poor Jenny Sack in The Sopranos?
I haven't finished The Sopranos. There's my.
You know who Jenny
today.
Sack is?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I haven't finished The Sopranos though,
Yeah,
so no, I do not remember those episodes.
There's yeah, poor Jenny Sack. Let's buckle up. Let's tell you about buckling up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Wind has been blowing all day. It's been a bit smoggy. How many home runs? We'll go around the room here. Steak and a beer bet. That was brought up in the stream. Do we still do that? Yes, we still do that. Steak and a beer for whoever's closest. Over, under on number of home runs. Is the wind blowing in out at Haymarket tonight?
I'm checking that right now.
I have no idea.
The wind is blowing from the southwest towards the northeast.
Mm-hmm.
And now
So that would be it would
From
be
left
it would be
field to right field?
No, it'd be, you say southwest?
from the southwest towards the northeast.
It would be from like right field foul pole to left field foul pole.
No, so it's a launching pad, baby.
Yeah, it'll be good for the right-handed hitters.
Yeah.
The right-handed hitters will have some success today.
Hey,
Does
why
Max
don't
hit
we
two?
why don't we get narrower on this? Yeah, who's going to hit the home run?
Well, I'm going to be Captain Obvious because I'm good at it. And we go Max. He hits over under 1.5.
Give me the Bryce over a half.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll set everyone at a half. I'll take Karen over a half.
Okay.
I think he's in the
I feel
starting
like
lineup tonight.
I feel like Elijah kind of got fleeced there because we got the
No, it's
picks of
okay. I feel good
Anderson
about
and Matthews right off the bat.
I just going to come in and say, I want that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a Fred Flintstone steak.
You know, I think I like Karen. He's batting in the 5 spot tonight. Yeah, let's go with Karen.
Okay. You're going Bryce?
Yeah, and this is also a revenge game too, so
Big
you know
time.
that they're going to be swinging.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got one of our own at Hurrdat that's doing some work with Nebraska Public Media.
Anna Bellinghausen
Yes.
on the call tonight.
Check her.
As she's been doing great work, as you mentioned, with us at Hurrdat, and now she gets a great opportunity. You caught her on a couple Husker basketball games this season, women's basketball, and now she gets the Husker men, and being, I believe, a UNO alumni herself.
Mm-hmm.
Big matchup.
Yep, it'll be all right. Nebraska's got to have it, to put it nicely. The midweeks have not been great, but They've got some momentum. Thanks for spending time. Thanks for hanging out. Back tomorrow, midweek edition with Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. To get that podcast downloaded, talk to you tomorrow at 4. Thanks.